What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we are back with another Detroit Lions preview / prediction video, man. I am excited to be back. I'm fired up for this season, man. I love doing these videos. I don't love editing. I'll be completely honest with you. Don't love editing these, but I love doing these videos, man, and just talking about everything about the upcoming game. Now, week one is always the most difficult. I can even remember back to preparing for the Chiefs game last year, and I was just like, I don't really know what to look at. It's kind of like what Dan Campbell said, because there's no film from the season. The Rams didn't really play starters in the preseason. I mean, they played guys that could start, but they didn't really play their foundational starters, and everything's so vanilla that I'm not really sure what to look at. So I had to go back to last season, watch LA Rams from then, look at some of the new pieces that could be in there, and then just kind of project based on the personnel that they have. Similar to last year, we're going to break it down from Rams offense to Rams defense, how the Lions can attack both sides, what I expect on both sides of the field. I'm fired up for this one. Let's see if we can get some predictions correct in today's video, and let's see how accurate this is, because I haven't got a score prediction right, and that's what I'm really aiming for. So with all that being said, let's start off with some of the injury updates that we have as of the time of recording. Keep that in mind. Things will change as we get more information by the time you're seeing this. We also may have Friday's participation report, depending on when this comes out. Have the Lions participation report updated, and we'll start there first. First off, still no Lauren Strickland, the fifth safety on this year's 53-man roster, dealing with a thumb injury. I assume if he doesn't practice tomorrow, he won't be playing in this game. The positive is that Ife Melifonwu was limited in practice. The Lions didn't actually practice yesterday. We're not sure if he's going to be available for this game, but if he is, could be a lot of versatility for Ife Melifonwu. I could see him kind of sticking into kind of that role that we saw CD Deuce play when he came back from injury last year, playing nickel, playing some safety, playing in the box. A lot of versatility on the table for Ife Melifonwu to work his way on the field as kind of the third safety for the Lions. If he can't go, of course, we have guys like Brandon Joseph, and we got a veteran on the practice squad and CJ Moore, so we'll have some options there, but it'd be nice to have Ife if we don't have Lauren Strickland. The big one, DJ Reader. I think this guy could absolutely change the game as he's on the field. We know that they're aiming for week 2, but they're leaving the door open that he could be back in week 1. They spoke about his leadership. He was limited in practice once again today with the quad injury he is recovering from. I don't know if he's going to play or not, but if he does, I think it is an absolute game changer. And even Aaron Glenn touched on some of the impact that he has on the linebackers just by his ability to handle double teams. And I have a stat for that we'll get to a little bit later. On to the LA Rams side of things, really the biggest update that I think we need to talk about now is that cornerback Darius Williams, the veteran cornerback returning to the LA Rams, has been placed on IR, which is a massive loss for the LA Rams on paper. I assume Kobe Durant will probably step in at starting corner now for the LA Rams, opposite of Tre'Davious White, another new addition there. Maybe they'll keep Lake into that slot role. We could see it work out a little bit differently. They don't have a ton of depth on their 53-man roster. Guys like Josh Wallace, an undrafted free agent, is one of their depth pieces. I thought the guy would be a safety at the NFL. Based on the scheme that they play, they don't need a ton of straight line speed. Now, Kobe Durant does bring that at a 4.38. Lake at a 4.59, not exactly the same. But again, for their scheme and for their slot role, it's not necessary that they have pure speed. But Kobe Durant is a little bit smaller, under 6 foot, about 180 pounds. So I assume that's where they'll go with it at the quarterback position without having Williams. These guys are all still playmakers in the back end. They definitely have a lot of ball skills back there. But that being said, this is still a massive loss for this team, because last time we played LA Rams, clearly we were picking players that we wanted to go at, and one of those guys at the back end, Witherspoon. Witherspoon is no longer an LA Ram, but now without having Williams, it could point to the Lions going after Kobe Durant in this game. That would not surprise me at all if that's the guy that they picked and said, let's go at this guy in the passing game. So we'll leave it there for the injury report. We know the offensive line is kind of shuffling around for the LA Rams. We'll have to see how that all shakes out. It sounds like Jonah Jackson's going to play center. They're going to leave Steve Avila at the left guard position like he played last season, which I think does make sense. I think his skill set could struggle a little bit from what I've seen move to center. Just some of the quickness, off of that process could be a little bit of a problem there, and some of the hand usage as well as the play kind of rolls along. So it sounds like Jonah's actually going to kick the center. At left tackle, Noteboom in this game, I think, is a player the Lions can absolutely take advantage of it. Going back to last season, seeing a game like the New York Giants, who have a good defensive line, but a guy like Noteboom really struggled, in my opinion, in that game. I think that's someone the Lions will go after. We'll see if Havenstein plays their right tackle. If he does, I still think the Lions can find success there. And then at right guard, probably their most successful offensive lineman from last season based on grades in Dotson. Still a guy I think the Lions can attack. Big body, especially when it comes to rushing the quarterback. So with that being said, let's now dive into it. We'll end with a score prediction as always, but let's dive into it, and let's start off with the LA Rams defense first, because this is a really interesting side of the ball with all the new pieces that we now have that a lot of guys were kind of just projecting what are they going to be at the NFL level. Braden Fisk, probably going to play a huge role for them. Omar Spates now looks like he could step in and be a starter for them, maybe alongside a guy guy like Roseboom or potentially a Troy Reader, but it looked like Spates is going to start after having an excellent preseason, and honestly, watching him, like, yeah, that kind of makes sense. Trading away Ernest Jones for Spates, I think that made a ton of sense watching how the guy performed in preseason and what they want out of that position. Having now Jared Verse into the mix, another guy that we're kind of projecting here, I expect to see a lot of Jared Verse, probably a lot of times in that Byron Young type of role. Like, Byron Young usually didn't drop a ton of coverage. That was more Michael Hoyt, and I think when you looked at a guy like Byron Young, yeah, he had 8 sacks, but he didn't feel like a very effective or very fearful pass rusher. I think Jared Verse probably kind of takes over some of that role this season for the LA Rams, and they try to get a huge boost at that position. So some real changes up front. They still have Brown manning the nose tackle position, which was probably their most consistent defensive lineman last season outside of Aaron Donald. Obviously, that's a key loss, but even when we take Aaron Donald out of that, depending on what the two young guys become, you center that with a good nose tackle in Brown that was very consistent last season, and it's really not a bad front. All the talk will be about, whoa, they lost Aaron Donald, but the guy that the Lions win at over and over last season is no longer on that defensive line. That was Jonah Williams last season, who the Lions just went after. Basically, whatever front they got into, the Lions were like, okay, let's go double team that guy. Let's run right behind that guy, and let's see if we can create some movement there. And they had a lot of success doing that. Now you take that piece out, and it feels like on paper, if it works out for them, they could have a much more well-rounded unit where you can't just simply take a player and attack that guy and stay away from the other one, which in our case was Aaron Donald. Now you don't have that guy that you maybe feel like you always have to stay away from, but it could be a much more well-rounded unit potentially here for the LA Rams. So I think that's a massive part to keep in mind here, because this one, as much as we'll talk about the scheme side, a lot of it as well is going to be personnel matchups, and the offensive defensive line is where things always start. Lions have a veteran offensive line versus a young defensive line, but that matchup is going to be massive because for the Lions in the last time they played the LA Rams, it was about their run game on early downs. When that started to kind of fall off towards the end of the game and the LA Rams started to find success and they created some negatives, all of a sudden the Lions were in positions where they weren't able to pass on early downs from positive positions, and all of a sudden their drive started to stall out a little bit, right? The Rams started to tweak their coverage, and we found ourselves not scoring points anymore. Now, sometimes that was just on us when Goff kind of slipped and fell, picked up a sack, but that's a key part of this is, can the Lions consistently create movement throughout this game? So going into this LA Rams defense, a couple things to know. First off, they played the most cover 6, I believe, statistically last season. Just kind of keep that in mind. That doesn't mean they did it a majority of the time, but more than anybody else in the NFL, which is a mix between cover 4 and cover 2. This is a heavy zone coverage team that also introduced a lot of cover 3 match versus us the last time we played this LA Rams team. Now, that draws a lot of similarities to what a team like the Dallas Cowboys ran against us this past season, where we had some struggles as well. I thought the LA Rams had some success when they got into that cover 3 match, especially when they started to kind of implement blitzing out of some of their zone coverage looks, because they're a pretty middle of the tier in terms of blitz rate, but they started to pick that up against us as that game rolled along, and I thought they found success because they were occasionally able to create negatives that it didn't feel like they were able to create early in that game. And I'm assuming that's going to be the LA Rams strategy, is say, hey, we have to get this team behind the chains. Can we create negatives? Can we get them off script? We can't let them have 4 yards on first down running the football, then a 6-yard pass by Jared Goff. We have to make it 2nd and 12, because as soon as we do that, everything changed the last time we played this team. So I'm assuming they're going to be very aware of that, and they may come out and run a lot of the similar coverages to what they did at the end of the game, which was a lot of that cover 3 match early in this game to just attack that way. However, they do what we kind of know them to do, which is, again, a lot of cover 6 coverage, a lot of quarters coverage in the back end as well. It also kind of fits their personnel, especially with some of the undersized cornerbacks as well. If they do kind of play in that range, right, and it fits Tre'Davious White being able to get up and press guys, that is where the Lions, a couple of just the foundational pieces that they had last season. Number one, passing the ball on early downs against this team. For pass protection, it helps a ton there for the Lions. One, they can naturally kind of slide protection out of their run fakes, so that helps a ton. It helped with Aaron Donald. Even against this defensive front without Aaron Donald, it's still a really good pass rushing unit on paper. So there's that aspect that the Lions can help their pass protection by play action on early downs, passing the ball on early downs just in general. That's another thing the Lions did. That's how they sealed the game, is they threw the ball on 2nd down. It was clear the Lions didn't want to live in 3rd and long. And I think one thing that makes the LA Rams difficult is maybe they don't have the best defensive back personnel on paper, but they have pass rushers when they know they can pin their ears back. And when they do that, they also have a lot of versatility between their safety and cornerback play, where they're very willing to say safety basically play a cornerback role, you go cover the receiver one-on-one, and all of a sudden they can be very versatile within their coverages and not give you an exact tell on who's going to be one-on-one with who. So that's the area they want to live in, like most defenses defenses, that's where they want to get us to. And for the Lions offensively, I'm assuming it's going to be a similar strategy, especially if the LA Rams come out with a similar approach, which is when we're going to throw the ball, we're going to throw the ball early. We got to stay on top of the chains. We got to get the ball out fast because we're going to throw the ball early, not let them pin their ears back. And again, we have to find some consistency throughout the game rushing the football. Another thing that was key for the Lions with so much zone coverage was overloading zone coverage looks by the LA Rams. Fast motion was a huge aspect. When you watch the LA Rams offensively, you'll see some sort of motion pretty much every single play. Now, sometimes they change the play out of that. They get a tell from the coverage. They do an excellent job. For the Lions offensively, it'll be about overloading zone coverage, creating matchups. So a guy like Omar Spade starting at linebacker for them potentially in this game. The coverage piece, when you talk about change direction, transition speed, that's where he gets a little bit limited. He accelerates well, can create depth, but where the Lions can overload, create short motions or fast motions to put three on one side, force the defense to kind of roll their coverage a little bit over to one direction, and then come back to the backside of it because that's where the lane was created. The Lions do an excellent job against zone coverage and creating those overload situations. We saw it within the red zone as well. They go to quarters coverage, and the Lions create kind of a high-low opportunity. Do we want JMO? Do we want the corner? Do we want the flat? You got to pick somebody. Somebody's going to be open. And that's the advantage the Lions have by doing that on early downs because they don't have to play to the sticks, right? They don't have to get 10 yards. They can take 3 yards. So because of that, they have an ability to overload zone coverage and find success there. So I expect a similar plan on that front. However, the difference could be LA Rams coming out early and saying, let's get after this guy and try to shake this up a little bit. Now, when it comes to running the football, just a couple key things I'm looking for. Number one, I expect to see us pulling some linemen in this game. First off, Graham Glasgow is something that he does well. I expect two guys that we're going to see pulling a lot. We pulled Jonah Jackson a lot last time we faced his team. Now you have Graham at left guard, who I think pulls extremely well, so it just makes sense to do so. And same thing with Penei Sewell. So you have guys that can pull on both sides of the line of scrimmage to work on to these smaller defensive ends in this game and potentially create down block opportunities against the three techniques, which could be a guy like Kobe Turner, for example. Guys that aren't necessarily built to play that role. They're a little bit smaller on the defensive line, but they're very quick. They're tough. They well against single blocks. That's where I expect the Lions to try to take advantage. Power plays, sweeps, pulling offensive linemen. That's an area where the Lions had success last year, and they have those threats on both sides of the line of scrimmage in this game between Graham Glasgow and Penei Sewell. So I expect the Lions to try to utilize some of that athleticism. Now, last time we played this team in the passing game, another matchup to watch, outside of us going at Witherspoon with Amon-Ra St. Brown, was the Lions attacking Hoyt in coverage. He dropped more in coverage than anybody else for a typical kind of 3-4 look up front with a 5 down front, even though their two outside linebackers don't have their hands in the dirt. Hoyt drops into coverage a ton, and their new defensive coordinator, Shula, is expected to do a lot of the similar things they did in the past, just kind of adjust to his personnel. So I'm going to keep my eye on, does Hoyt see the field a ton? If he does, I expect the Lions to try to go at him in coverage, put him into tough situations in zone, and of course, if they can create one-on-one opportunities in zone coverage, still do that underneath and try to find some of their level 1 threats to get open. St. Brown, Isaiah Williams, potentially Jahmyr Gibbs in those looks. If it's not him and it's a lot of just Jared Verse taking that role,
and the Lions can play a game with the LA Rams like they did last year, which was a ton of 12 personnel to get front seven players onto the field and attack that unit with their athletic tight end, specifically Sam Laporta, and their underneath threats against so much zone coverage and not pure man-to-man. That being said, though, even the flip side here, an 11 personnel look where they go to the screen quick on the play. If a guy like Jared Verse is out there where Michael Hoyt is at the top of the screen and he's not dropping into coverage and the opposite outside linebacker is not dropping into coverage because they want more pass rush production, they're going to lose an underneath defender. And if they do drop into coverage, again, that's something the Lions will want to put in the action, and you can expect that out of the backfield. You can expect that from Gibbs. You can expect that from the inside slot for them to do everything they can to put those guys into coverage. You're going to be on the field, you're either going to cover or rush the pass, and if you're rushing the pass for both of you, you're blitzing, you're losing a piece in coverage. It's one of the back and forth games the Lions played last year.
The matchups that I do like for the Lions attacking that back end, first off, would be Quentin Lake in the slot. Now, when you look at a straight line speed, you say, well, just put JMO there and run by him. And while that on paper makes sense, if you're just running a fade or a vertical route, Lake's going to be able to stay in a reasonable position. Now, you could potentially get over top like that, but to me, it's really about the change of direction that will be the problem for him playing in that slot role, especially when we're talking about man coverage here, okay? Zone coverage a little bit different for matchups, but we're talking about man or their match coverage where Lake is constantly asked to carry vertical routes, anything that goes up the seam. Unless it's an undercall, he's going to carry that thing vertical. Operation to deal with just straight line speed vertical, but it's everything underneath. It's all the change of direction. So if Jameson Williams can get in and out of breaks quickly in this game, if that's Khalif Raymond and that's saying, hey, let's get Jahmyr Gibbs into the slot, expect the Lions to try to find that matchup and try to take some advantage of it. And they may do as simple as saying, hey, you want to go one-on-one with him, you're going to carry a vertical, JMO go into the slot. And that is one thing to keep an eye on because I've seen Jameson Williams a lot more in the slot this offseason than I had in years prior. I think that's expanding his route tree. And I think on paper it'd make a ton of sense for the Lions to say, let's get Jameson a lot of looks in the slot. Let's utilize vertical speed. And at the flip side, let's utilize Amon-Ra St. Brown out wide. Physicality that he brings to the table. I'm sure the Lions would love to take advantage of that matchup one-on-one. Again, similar like they did with Witherspoon whenever they got the one-on-one matchups there. So I could see the Lions using both of those at the same time. St. Brown wide and putting a guy like Jameson Williams into the slot. The other matchup, of course, would be Sam Laporta. You could really say against anybody. Against this team, specifically when you talk about third downs, the two guys that the Lions like to go to, because typically on third down, LA goes to single high looks, right? They get out of their two high looks, they go cover one, and they go cover three, and they usually match out of that. So the matchup that I like is typically the tight end position, Sam Laporta, against guys like John Johnson, who has had some struggles against tight end one-on-one, some of the range issues there as well. And then, of course, as always, Amon-Ra St. Brown is the guy that they would look to in those spots. So those are two guys that I like in those areas. I know that sounds like a basic answer, but I do like that matchup on paper if they decide to go more three match. If they decide to do things like that, and hey, the safety's going to carry vertical, if they decide to play that direction, I expect a guy like Sam Laporta to be very involved in the offense to try to create some of those one-on-ones. Side zone runs or the dive plays, the double teams that they were able to create, whether that's attacking the three technique with double teams, which again will probably be a guy like Kobe Turner in this game. Brown is going to be a key to all of your run plays because he's good laterally. He can work over blocks, but he has a lot of success with quickness and creating immediate blown blocks. So that matchup between Brown and Frank Ragnow is going to be one to watch. I think for consistency's sake, inside zone runs, dive plays, those are going to lead to probably the most consistent positive net results from what I've seen, because I think the Lions will be able to create movement in there just by their personnel. They'll be able to create early double teams, and at very least, they'll pick up a few yards. Now, a guy like Spates, he's good working downhill, but what I also am very open to is usually when we talk about running backs, kind of getting a one-on-one with a linebacker, we're thinking everything's got to be in space. I think Jahmyr Gibbs and Dave Montgomery can both have success between the tackles at making linebackers miss up to the second level. So I think from a consistency spot, that is something I would look for. We saw counter pulls being utilized, as I talked about, kind of sealing, down blocking these smaller defensive ends, kicking out with Penei Sewell, maybe a tight end follows along as well, power run plays. Could see a lot more gap scheme in this game, but going towards those young defensive ends. And that was even my prediction, which is Monty scoring our first touchdown because of that reason. Now, the other thing I want to see the Lions do from a creative aspect rushing the football is utilize some eye candy. I know that's like a very basic word, like, hey, eye candy, of course eye candy. But truly, against a younger linebacker room, it could be Rose Boom, who doesn't move incredibly well in space, can have some issues, in coverage anyway. If it's Omar Speights starting in this game, can really accelerate, can really get downhill. He has a lot of nice dip and bends, so he can work some of the outside zone plays. The best way you slow down, and I think you hesitate the confidence that a guy like that has from playing fast in the preseason like we saw with our linebackers, eye candy. Now, of course, play action, that's an easy way to point to it. You have success running the ball in early downs, that'll open up and you'll create those all day long, and then you'll get them into an in-between game, and you'll slow down some of those downhill attacks. But specifically, jet sweeps, end arounds. I want to see just a couple sprinkled in potentially very early in this game, just to give them a taste of like, okay, that's going to be a threat. That is a thing. And then maybe you sell it and you fake it throughout the rest of the game. You utilize that to just hold the eyes of those guys. Because I assume the Lions are going to want to really lean onto the run game and find consistency for week one. And it could be a lot of David Montgomery. And because of that, I think the Lions will also know that, hey, we have to make sure these linebackers are at very least playing honest, okay? Because they're going to shut down cutback lanes. They have good vision, flow quick to the football. Just utilizing a couple of eye candy plays like that, which in the preseason he didn't have much success against. That's what I want to see the Lions utilize in this game. I think he's a little bit heavy when you talk about kind of the upper body stop and start, speaking about Omar Speights, for example. I think in space, you see it in some of the transition. There's just kind of like a pause in his game. It's not that he doesn't have the change of direction ability. It's to me that there's like a hesitation to process and say, okay, I do want to go. There's a little bit of a pause there, and that pause gets created when he's a little bit unsure. So I think you have to make these backers just a little bit unsure. Just make them think early in this game, put something in the back of their mind, or at very least set it up for later in the game. So misdirection, pause their transition, I think will help the Lions a ton in this game. Lions, another matchup that I'm looking for in particular for running the football is the tight end position. Sam Laporta to me did not have his best game against the LA Rams. Now in fairness, he was coming off an injury, but he didn't have his best game against the LA Rams last time, and he was utilized a ton in the run game. A guy like Michael Hoyt, I thought, had a lot of success towards the end of that game. Outside zone runs, toss plays, forcing us to spill things out wide. They had success containing us edge to edge as the game rolled along. And I thought that was a huge matchup in which they found some success. So I'm really looking for that matchup in particular because I think our tight ends, we saw a lot of 12 personnel last season from the Lions. One, to make sure that they had that personnel on the field. They wanted LA Rams to limit the DBs they had. They wanted them to keep Michael Hoyt. They wanted Byron Young out there, and they wanted 7 guys up front. They wanted those matchups for the passing game. They wanted to slow them in coverage. That way they could attack them in coverage. But also in terms of the run game, now it becomes the matchup of can your tight ends at very least hold their ground? And I thought that's something that got away from us as the game rolled along. So that matchup, because I expect a lot of early 12 personnel, will mix. Expect a lot of early 2 tight ends like last year. That matchup to me is going to be something to watch for sure on paper in this game. Now, when you move on to some of the passing attack for the Lions in this game and a couple of things that I'm looking for, first off, let's start with the pressure guys up front, right? You have Jared Verse, a lot of bull rush opportunities, didn't always feel that clean, but he's going to try to walk you back. I really focus on a guy like Taylor Decker for that position just because of kind of the difference in the way that they're matched up. Sees Penei Sewell in this game. I think that's a matchup the Lions want to go at early. If it's Taylor Decker and he's playing right outside linebacker, which is probably going to be the case, and he's more so seeing Taylor Decker, Lions may stay a little bit more away from that because I don't think you're going to create the same movement at the point of attack like you would with Sewell. Sewell could wear him down. I don't see the same case with Taylor Decker, so that's just a little thing to kind of keep an eye on. But in terms of pass rush, I expect to see a lot more Verse. I think they've upgraded there over a guy like Byron Young if he is on the field. For the Lions in this game, passing the football, Kobe Turner does a really nice job with push-pull, hand usage, kind of continuing to work through the rep. Byron Young doesn't scare me too much in this one. Michael Hoyt can have success, especially the ability to get the edge. That's something to keep an eye on. And obviously, Braden Fisk, same thing. He can win quickly inside. The big thing about the LA Rams in terms of creating pressure is they love to blitz their off-ball linebackers, not their edge rushers. Those guys drop. They love to bring their off-ball backers. Again, Spate's skill set says he's going to blitz a ton in this game. I expect to see a ton of that. So one, it's about communication, right? Running back stepping in, offensive lineman communicating, but that's where the pressure is going to come from. So if it's a running back one-on-one, got to give us some time because a couple of times, even though they didn't get there, they threw off the play, created a negative for us. And if they're going to come out blitz early, which I expect they will, it's going to come from the off-ball linebacker position, and that's going to be the key. It's the interior offensive lineman communicating, being on the same page, saying, hey, we got to worry about this, and the running back, whoever it is that's best set to pass protect, stepping in there and giving us some relief because I expect to see a lot of that, or otherwise getting the ball out of your hands quickly, getting the ball out fast into the flat, those kind of things.
Now, another reason Lions should be able to run the ball is because you're getting a lot of early down 2 high safeties. Cover 4, cover 6, Tampa 2 in this case. That's 2 high safeties. You want to be able to run against that. But defensively, because again, they stack the line of scrimmage to kind of balance that out, this is where you put those guys into coverage action. So here, for example, you go Tampa 2. Hoyt's eventually going to drop into coverage. Goff gets through 1, 2, 3, quickly gets the ball out of his hands and attacks the outside linebacker dropping. And then it's, again, finding about the little spacing underneath, the little zone holes. St. Brown does a great job of this for our guys making themselves just a target in these little windows. Collie Freeman is another great example of that.
When you talk about kind of the passing attack for the Lions, one thing that I want to see early, kind of like the run game, is I want to see them break a tendency early, right? Every team has tendencies. They all have concepts they like to get to. We saw the LA Rams last year, the concepts they love to get to. We'll get to that. But for the Lions, we know their kind of concepts they love to get to, especially play action plays. They love to get to the daggers, right? You push someone up the seam, you run the deep dig behind it, and the Lions had success. They worked really well against some of those cover 6, cover 4 looks early in the game. They had success on chunk plays there multiple times with Josh Reynolds, and that's one of their go-to plays on early downs, especially because that's what the Rams do. That's their tendency, so it's going to be open. And again, Jared Goff can move guys with his eyes. They can overload zone coverage, and then they pass protect well enough where the depth can be thrown off. You have an effective run game to pull the linebackers, and you're pushing those routes far enough the Lions were that they were just getting behind linebackers.
And when you talk about attacking these outside linebackers, one thing that you'll notice, like here you get a cover 6 look, which is simply just based on your alignment. You go to the field side, you go 2 by 2. There you're going to get the cover 2 side. You flip it over, get a little more condensed towards boundary, get quarters coverage. But also, these outside linebackers, while they do plaster routes like here on Jahmyr Gibbs, taking away the flat for Michael Hoyt, these guys also struggle with change of direction. So they're not going to bounce between routes. They're going to pick somebody and they're going to take it away, which allows Goff to make much more decisive decisions, saying, okay, the flat's gone, quickly get to the curl right underneath this cover 4 look.
Lions, though, in this game, I expect the LA Rams are going to be ready for that because last time we played them, they were ready for that. The first pass the Lions had to Josh Reynolds, the first chunk play on a dagger concept was nearly intercepted. Not nearly intercepted, but the corner off the backside playing cover 4 got nearly into a position to make a play on the football by just taking off and chasing the play across the field. He felt it coming. He didn't have a threat on his side, so he just took off. He knew what the Lions were trying to get to. So for the Lions to self-evaluate, if that's kind of what we're going to see again, which I assume it is, the Lions have their core plays they like to get to, I would immediately like to see them shake up that tendency.
The linebackers will be pretty decisive to their spots, but they're not going to take away an overlap zone coverage very often. But here, it's the backside cornerback that just takes off and leaves Sam Laporta in this cover 4 look towards the dig route because he knows what's coming from the offense. The linebackers taking away the flat, seeing the seam route, those kind of things, they're going to leave this space. And here in 12 personnel, you have the 7 defensive front players. But it's the backside cornerback here that races across the field that actually becomes the threat that nearly gets his hands on this football. This shouldn't normally happen because there is a threat in Sam Laporta on his side, but instead it does because he knows what's coming and he knows what the Lions like to get to.
Maybe that's a post corner, right? Maybe that's push your slot, up vertical up the seam, and instead of running a dig route, maybe we show one step inside and we break it into a corner route towards the boundary. That way it's a little bit of a shorter pass, and we try to get someone over the sideline against a smaller cornerback, maybe that we can get up on a little bit, or against the slower cornerback that we feel like we get vertical on that's just playing and driving on the football. That's something I look for the Lions to do, is try to break a tendency. Maybe it's the big throwback play that they tried against that cover 3 match where it turned into a sack, I believe, but the Lions tried to set up a big throwback play to Jameson Williams across the field. I think they need to break that tendency early just with a play to just be like, hey, that's not what it's going to look like. You thought that's what it was, and we're going to break something completely out of that. I expect Ben Johnson to have something up his sleeve to just give them a completely different look than what we typically expect. Tampa 2 as well. Again, a lot of zone coverage, so in those spots, Lions will do their job to get the ball to Jahmyr Gibbs, that on long distance situations or on early downs. Curl routes were huge. We saw a lot of curls and hitches in this game be successful against cover 4 looks as well. Jameson Williams being able to push the cover 4, work his way back to the football. That was successful. So expect to see a lot of curls and hitches out wide if we see similar looks to the defense this season as well. 6 of cover 4 looks, I expect against the cover 4 the Lions again to utilize for wide receivers. It was a lot of Josh last season. It was a lot of Jamison last season working back to the football. Those guys will have to step up in those areas. And the flip side to that will be, hey, when you go cover 6, you'll get more looks, I think, underneath on the Lions. Drags, crossers, being on the same page there is going to be key for the Lions. And again, still against cover 4, we could look flats, but I think wide receivers out into the flats, they're going to kind of push us to that direction if they do what they typically do in coverage. Safeties and corners play very aggressive. They will leave their zones. They'll get out of their zones. Lake will drive on routes that he's expecting. He'll feel deep crosser, and he'll just step down and take it away and race on to the play. If they feel it off of a play action set especially. If you give them a play action look and they're dropping in a zone, expect backside to be very aggressive. Expect safeties to lead their spots. Expect guys to try to jump routes and understand your tendency. So again, that's why I want to break it early. Something a little bit off script from what they would expect, especially out of one of those play action sets. I think that would simple up success. Maybe not just a throwback screen out of it. Something along those lines just to give them something different. Roseboom, Young, Hoyt, Jared Verse, if he's in coverage, goes guys on the field. They'll want to make those guys work in coverage. That's just one of the matchups that they can exploit constantly. And then at that point, you can start to limit the motion. You can get, kind of shells that you like, especially on early downs where there's not as much post-snap movement from the back end. And in those spots, the Lions can simply create matchups from the slot position, which is where they're very comfortable throwing the position. Last thing I'll say to this, you get to third down spots, again, expect that they're going to see a lot of single high looks. You're going to have one-on-one winners. You're going to see a lot of single high looks, so look for St. Brown, Laporta, guys that can win one-on-one. They're going to do what they can to try to take away the middle of the field. That's what everybody knows against us, so you'll see a lot of cover 1. We saw last year St. Brown on the fade route. We saw some out routes. We saw Laporta. Those two guys I expect to be the go-tos in those spots. But hey, if it really is the breakout game for Jameson Williams, maybe it's the opportunity for Jameson in those spots to go find a matchup and say, I'm going to win here. Because, look, you have Kyer Elam. If you put St. Brown out wide, you're probably going to see Tre'Davious White on him. So maybe that's the time for Jameson. Look, Kobe Durant, you can't cover me, man. I'm bigger than you. I'm going to outsize you. I'm going to outmuscle you. Let me run some slants. Let me run a little double move. Let me run my fade to out wide. Like, this could be the opportunity. Let me show you I'm better at the comeback routes. Probably more so the slants. That's what he runs well. This could be the chance to say, let's put me out on the field. Let me run a quick slant and let me go beat this guy. That could be J-Mo's chance to kind of burst onto the scene, is really in those key downs where last year it was Laporta and Saint that we leaned on. Maybe this year it becomes Jameson Williams who the Lions feel like they can lean on. And I think they need to. They need to have someone step up in this one because they can lean into those two guys. But again, for consistency, I expect a lot more 3-match this year. I expect a lot more one. I expect a lot more. They're saying, hey, we want you to get you out wide, and we're going to probably bring an extra rusher, and we want to see if you can beat us one-on-one. And this is the time for Jameson Williams to step up to the plate and say, hey, maybe it's after drive 1, and they're like, all right, this is what they're doing. You got to go win. And Goff has to simply just say, I trust you to be there. I'm going to put it there. I don't need to see it open. I need to just trust that you're going to win. And that's where Jameson Williams could grow up really fast in this game. And then red zone, keeping out a lot of quarter stuff. So they'll give you a lot of underneath looks, specifically, again, overloading coverage, a lot of quarters, but specifically the Lions are going to want to run the ball. And that's where you see the counter plays come into play. You saw the Gibbs touchdown, counters, pulls. So I expect to see a lot of that. Lions are going to want to get downhill, inside zones. Can we win against Brown one-on-one? That's going to be the key there. Simplify it. Let's get downhill once we get to the red zone. Flipping it over to the defensive side of the ball and attacking attacking this LA Rams offense, which is one of, to me, the most difficult offenses to deal with just because they can find answers at the line of scrimmage. This isn't a team that goes out there with the play and then it's like, hey, oh, you had the right coverage. They don't got anything. This is a problem. LA Rams are very, very capable of just going to the line and Matthew Stafford getting a look from coverage and just saying, okay, we're going into this play and we're going to have a beater for it. They create beaters for so many plays. They have a great plan for so many of your defensive looks, especially on early downs. So nearly every single play, you're going to get some sort of motion. And that's not just pass plays. They'll do the same thing for run plays. Are you in man? Are you in zone? If you're in man, maybe we'll go a little outside weak zone, right? If you're in zone coverage, we may go with our dive play that we love to utilize, which is kind of the new implementation of this offense, getting downhill. But they utilize that motion pre-snap to get tells. For the Lions last season, I thought they wanted to simplify it. I expect Glenn wants to do the same thing, which is, hey, cover one, we're going to roll our safeties. So, hey, roll our safeties. That way they can't create advantages of somebody just beats us across the field because he did a fast jet motion. They threw a quick out and we couldn't get over there. Instead, we're going to rotate our safeties. So, hey, you have one receiver start from the slot on the right side. Maybe he drops to the you have one receiver on the right side. You have a receiver on the right side. He motions across. Your left cornerback drops out the safety. Your safety drives down. He picks up that matchup 1-on-1. So what the Lions did last time, that's where the versatility of Kirby, but specifically Brian Branch, can be a complete difference maker in this game. I expect the Lions will want to do that again. So there's a couple keys to that. Is first off this. I expect the Lions are going to want to simplify this game. I expect Aaron Glenn is going to say this. We want to get after Stafford. We want to bring extra guys. We don't need to bring 7. We don't need to go cover 0, but we want to go cover 1 blitz. We want to bring 5, and we also want to say let's play man coverage. And this is the biggest difference that is just projecting. What is our personnel going to look like? Because last season, we did not have this personnel on paper. That is what the Lions invested in. It's Terrion Arnold, it's Rakestraw, it's Amik Robertson, it's Carlton Davis. It is about those guys and their ability to win where they're most comfortable, man coverage. And that's what Glenn wants to do. This is like the perfect test. Now, it's not a great test because a lot of what the Rams can do is just get guys open by rubbing routes and creating kind of alignment issues, and you can't get to a spot where it's like, hey, I covered him, but he got open because they created this little stack formation. You're going to have that, but I think Glenn on paper is really going to want to simplify it. He's going to want his defense playing fast. He doesn't want guys out of space, out of spots, because last season we came out, cover 3. They put us in tough positions. Stafford uses his eyes extremely well, holds coverage, and gets the ball out. He's got these crazy arm angles, so it's very difficult to just get in his face and not let him throw somewhere. He'll throw it everywhere on the field. The entire field is open to him. You know, the Lions will go cover 4. All of a sudden, they force you to be late, and somebody's open. You have to play incredibly fast in zone. You cannot fall for his eyes. You have to trust route combos, and that's something that the Lions can do with more experience, especially at linebacker and at corner, but it's definitely going to be a challenge. I think to simplify it is what Glenn will want to do. So then the question is, how does your personnel hold up? Zone situations, Carlton Davis is going to be key, because when they go single side receivers, he's probably going to be the guy that's one-on-one. He's probably going to be the guy that's going to press. And I think for him in that spot, just to win one-on-ones. A lot of times, we saw last year Robinson was huge against us. We talk about Puka and Kupp, but it was DeMarcus Robinson who had a massive game against us the last time we saw this team. They love him once they get into red zone spots. So spots like that. The next thing is, with all this man coverage, it's going to be so crucial. The Lions are really good with communicating depth. Obviously, assignment sound. The 1 4th down that we gave up, we were not communicating well. Everybody was confused. Nobody knew who to drive down on the receiver. So we had a late adjustment, and they catch an easy out route and pick up first down just because they got us creating confusion. Plus, because so much of it's fast motion and short motion and movement pre-snap and guys aligning quickly, but then the guy that motioned is usually the guy that's getting the football. There's so much of that going on, tied with the Lions are going to have to be really, really on point with, like, okay, they're stacked. You're going to press. I'm going to play off coverage, but let's make sure we have depth so we don't run into each other. Or they're going to bunch, or there's a stack, and here comes a fast motion receiver across. Now he's going to want to plant back inside and run a drag, and you guys are going to push up and create a pick play. He's going to run underneath. You have to be able to create good spacing and man coverage, and the Lions did a really good job of that in red zone last season. It's a huge reason they didn't score a touchdown. Yeah, a couple little tweaks, right? You had a lot of the 0-2 rat looks where you drop 2 guys underneath to play man across the board, and your tight ends will play over the safety. Your safeties played over the tight ends, and you bring a 3-man rush. But it was about the depth. It was about not running into each other, being aware of where everybody's at, and that's the thing that the Rams are going to take advantage of. When Dan Campbell talks about unraveling the defense, I think it's their ability to just find answers to everything, rather than in man coverage to say they can create a pick play. play. The Lions can handle that. They just have to be on the same page together, and that's going to be the key because that's what to do. And I think the flexibility of their safety position gives them a ton of upside for this game. Now, when you talk about the linebacker position for the Lions, Jack Campbell to me is a key. I thought Alex was awesome last time we played this team against the run, and he's going to be necessary there again. They also utilize a ton of running back screens. They love their kind of throwback running back screen off of outside zone flake play action. They love to do the little tight end slip screen. So your linebacker position, which is immediately like play the run, and they're like, oh, drop out. And then they got a screen underneath. They got us on that. They got everybody on that last year. I expect that to show up again. Alex is going to be key for those spots. He was key against the run, especially off the backside. The scrape speed that he was playing with, again, with some of our bigger defensive tackles, especially if they would win to not get up to the second level. He was a difference maker. I think he'll have to be a difference maker in this game again. Have to deal with the flats. Tyler Higbee is an excellent blocker at the point of attack. Plus, again, he loves to get into the flats, and they have tons of success on any play action bootlegs or rollouts. Love to get to the tight ends in the flat. But it's Jack Campbell, especially in zone. When the Lions are in zone cover, Jack Campbell, to me, has to trust reading route combinations, trust his eyes in coverage, and trust where he's supposed to get to, rather than simply reading the quarterback's eyes. That will not give you the answers against this guy. It will not. They have their combinations they love to get to, but they can simplify it. One of their combinations is the simple out route with the dig route right behind it, right? They want to go out and in, and right behind it's that in route. And the way that Stafford will look that off and hold the out route and then come right back behind it, just create a little bit of movement or hesitation with the no-look pass, they'll eat on that all day long. And their wide receivers do a great job. They break it off early. They get in front of the safety where the safety can't play it and drive or be aggressive enough. They do a great job attacking their depth. He is, to me, going to be a guy like Jack Campbell, who got beat twice for big plays in this last time we played them, reading quarterback's eyes. Instead, it's going to be trusting the route combination. You feel like it's a dig coming through, step in the passing lane, right? Trust that you're going to step there rather than say, okay, maybe I feel like it's a dig, but I see his eye, so I'm going to kind of drift, or I'm not going to move. No, step in the passing lane, right? Make him throw the football and trust that, because that's when you'll get passes that aren't great, and you'll have an opportunity to potentially take one away, because for the Lions, I think that was the key last year. It was just like, can we create an incomplete pass? That was a win. If the Lions could create an incomplete pass, they won last year. The offensive line's sake, this is, to me, on paper, the Lions, this should be their biggest advantage, and I believe that this is where the Lions can win the game. This is where the Lions can completely shake the game, because simply put, the Lions defensive line, if DJ Reader is healthy, could dominate this LA Rams offensive line. They could. Now, I'm not saying that to say like, hey, the movement, Jonah Jackson at center is the reason why. No. But regardless of that move, which I actually think isn't a terrible move, because again, I don't think Avila at center would be a great fit. It's more so about just their personnel. First off, Noteboom at the point of attack is going to struggle with a lot of power. So guys like Davenport, Pascal, Levi, if he's out there, walk back, knock back into the pocket, they're going to have success. They're also going to be key against the run, because all of the outside zone plays, setting the edge is going to be crucial to force cutback lanes, which again comes back to our linebackers and also DBs, as we'll get to in a second. Also, the fact that you go across the board. At left guard, you have Steve Avila, who Steve Avila is good early in the play, but can struggle as the play kind of rolls along. I think his hands could be a little bit hit and miss and being able to sustain. So late in plays, you could find success against Steve Avila. You have Jonah Jackson at center, who's never seen DJ Reader before, so he'll have no real plan for him, and he can struggle with quickness as well, especially because he can lose early and create early blown blocks. At right guard, you have Dotson, big body, but he struggles to move laterally and redirect. So whether that's bringing a blitz, whether that's creating slant opportunities like the Lions did towards the end of last game, which was, hey, bring a cornerback blitz, we'll slant our front, we're going to cross face and get upfield. That, or if it's, hey, we're bringing a linebacker late, or it's just simply one-on-one, Lee McNeil, give him some shake, right? Maybe that's on an obvious pass down. We get Pascal or Hutch inside. We can create some shake. We have an ability to get lateral on that guy and win and get an edge. And then at right tackle, even if Havenstein plays, you can beat him with speed around the edge. Now, he's not bad, but you can beat him with speed, and Aiden Hutchinson had a lot of success with the spin move, which is simply speed upfield. And the thing is, with Stafford, he won't take off very much, so you can have a lot more success in saying we can kind of open up our pass rush lanes. This doesn't have to be everything's a bull rush. We can win with speed. So that allows that right side of the offensive line to be in a spot to lose. And I think for the Lions on paper, this is their chance to go out there and be dominant. If DJ Reader plays, he will be the biggest, I think, swing player in this game, because DJ Reader not only can go win one-on-one, and somebody's going to be one-on-one interior, even with a four-man rush. Somebody's going to be one-on-one between him and Aleem, and it'll probably be him, and he had a better pressure rate than Aleem last season. That, plus also what he adds to the run game. Think about guys like Noteboom, who struggles at the point of attack, can struggle to deal with power, but moves well, gets to the second level, can create down blocks. Their Lions have matchups across the board that I think that they can win a majority of the time. Now, when it comes to the run game, let's talk about what's key here. First off, as I touched on, big defensive ends are crucial. Our big D ends are crucial, right? Pascal, Levi, sometimes Hutchinson, whoever's dealing with these tight ends, because their tight ends did really well last year. Higbee did really well. They also have Davis Allen, who's a big body tight end in line as well. Those guys moved well. Being able to create knockback and setting a strong edge is crucial. I trust this dude against Noteboom, but when things get wide, can we still create things and knock things back? So those guys are going to be crucial because those guys can completely change the game. The second one, though, is how much their wide receivers are involved in the run game. I should just say receiver. They, a lot of times, will have one receiver in line. A lot of times it's Puka. He'll get in line with their tight end. They constantly play 11 personnel. I think I noted them for 11 personnel every single play last time we played them, which means one tight end, one back, and then 3 receivers in their case. You will a lot of times get one receiver aligning like a tight end. And a lot of times when he plays in line and he gets right inside of your tight end, it's either a play action deep crosser on a bootleg, and then you have a chip flat, which usually that's where the ball's going to go, or it's the opposite of it's a run play and he's either going to get upfield to your DB or he's creating a split zone block, which puts your DBs in the action. And the LA Rams a lot of times seem like they feel like they have an advantage with that. If they put your DB in the action, I think they think they've won. And for the Lions, it's going to be about Brian Branch. In this case, it'll be about Terran Arnold, Carlton Davis, all these guys that we praise for playing the run. We're about to find out. The safeties, these guys are going to have to deal with that. And I think that's a crucial part because on outside zones, it's about the cutback lane. And when they create split zone with the receiver, they're going to block you up. Have to go outside zone against man. That way, when they go split zone, your defensive back carries across, you lose a body, and then they can split zone whoever your defensive back is, step down on the backside, and he can pick up that block. So they love to go outside zone against man. In zone, they love to go inside zone blocking, and that's when you'll step down receiver and just get upfield up to your defensive back or potentially linebacker. So that matchup is going to be huge in this one. I know it's O-line, D-line. That's the matchup that I'm watching for run blocking. It's about the other guys, not about the O-line. It's about the tight ends and the receivers for me in this game. And I don't think it's about the creativity either with the run game. You're going to get dives and you're going to get outside zones. That's what they're going to do a majority of the time. You get some stretch plays occasionally where they want to get really wide. Stafford will race his way out and they'll try to create a stretch play. And then it's like, all right, DBs, we've got to set the edge, that kind of thing. Hutch, you got to get out there. We saw that in the red zone last year. But it's going to be about those two guys. It's going to be about those two positional groups. And then again, backside cutback lanes is what they want to create. So DBs have to help us. Linebackers on the backside. And then up front, if DJ's playing, he saw combo blocks 25% of the time last season. That's more than any other defensive tackle in football. Teams have to double him. Have a Leem and Reader on the field at the same time, the Lions have an advantage because both those guys can handle double teams. They're not going to consistently get washed out, in my opinion. The key will be Jonah and Avila when they double team. Dotson's a big guy on the other side too, but I still love us in that matchup, either one. So I think the Lions can have success handling those doubles, allowing their linebackers to play a lot more clean, and that's going to allow Alex Anzalone to shine, which I thought he did last time we played the LA Rams against the run. Yeah, outside zone plays are a lot of times going to be towards the weak side. If that's towards Noteboom, we should dominate that matchup. Just straight up, we should dominate that matchup. In my opinion, I don't think we should have any problem there. Inside zones, the big thing you got to watch for is both outside zone and inside zone. They will run fakes off it again. Throwback screens, they love to do off the inside zone. Off the outside zone, a lot of times, is a play action bootleg. I want to see the Lions be aware of the chip flat because a lot of times that's where the ball goes. And because of the arm angle Stafford plays from, if your defensive end races upfield and your flat defender plays run at all, which again is a problem because they found a run game against that outside zone, if he creates that at all, they're going to immediately get the ball to the flat. So maybe once in this game, the Lions just change up coverage to take that away and to jump that. I think one way they can do it is by either inverting coverage or playing cloud coverage, which means that say you're in a cover 3, normally your 2 cornerbacks are responsible for verticals and then you have a single high safety, so you're playing typical cover 3. Maybe the Lions, which they did once the last time they played them, basically you take both of your safeties, one safety drops into a cornerback role, other safety plays middle field safety, and one corner plays his deep third. What that allows is for the opposite corner, is for the cornerback that didn't drop it to his deep third to play as a flat defender. So even though it looks like cover 3, it looks like the vertical route's going to take him upfield, it doesn't. It almost acts like cover 2 because he's going to pass it off and play underneath it to the flat. And he'd be waiting right there for that flat route. I'd love to see the Lions introduce that early in this one on a second down, which a lot of times second, first down, early downs, they love to do those play action boots and just have someone sit right there to clock the tight end that's just in there waiting for it. I would love to see that just to be prepared for that and kind of throw that off.
One of the safer coverage we saw the Lions kind of sit in a little bit last time we played the Rams, especially before half. This is effective, was quarter quarters or cover 4 covered just like this. The issue becomes play fake here. You have an open corner route, and it's just a simple setup by the route depth. They're really detailed offensively. I assume they will be week 1 as well. And if it isn't for Aiden Hutchinson winning here, you have a wide open corner route. That's a massive play. Here, for example, though, keep an eye on Jalen Reeves-Maybin because Jalen was huge in this game, especially in the red zone. I expect him to be on the field because he was an absolute game changer in coverage because he took away routes so fast and he trusted reading route combinations. So depending on how our other backers are playing early, Jalen might have to see the field a lot. But keep an eye on the safety position. So when he takes the out and then they come back to the dig, you see how he breaks it off immediately off the out route, makes it difficult for the safety to plant and drive. I want our guys to play aggressive in that spot. I want my safety to be aggressive to plant and stick and drive and let my cornerback protect over top if that's the case because I know they want to get this ball out. Now again, just as Dan Campbell stated, they want to unravel your coverage. So here, Lions go cover 3 early in the game and you can see on the bottom, right, if he plays under 1 correctly, but then he floats to the corner and there's not a fast enough communication with Kendall Vilder to say, hey, you take it, you pass it off with the safety, that way I can drop down and dive underneath. And you can see Aaron Glenn get on iffy for not just playing his responsibility and trying to do someone else's job, even though they're not in their spot fast enough. That's where they're going to unravel us in zone coverage, or they're going to try to, and it's going to put a lot of pressure on that communication. It can work, but the communication needs to be incredibly fast, or you can simplify it and play man, which I expect the Lions to try to do a lot in this game. But you see on a play like this, Aaron Glenn definitely got in his bag, and I'll show you another great example in a second, but I loved this. Lions go out and they show what looks like 2-man coverage. It looks like man coverage. You have Alex Anzalone right over the tight end. You're thinking man on the bunch, and then they drop into a pure cover 2, which the Lions don't typically play. All of a sudden, the ball doesn't get out as fast. Hutchinson also gets a win around the edge, and you force the check down. Aaron Glenn was adapting, he was getting in his bag, and I expect that same thing to happen in this game, where it's going to take a full 60 minutes, but as the game rolls along, understanding tendencies, what they want to get to, and adjusting as the game goes on, I got a lot of confidence in Aaron Glenn to give us a key stop when we need him most.
Do think the Lions will want to blitz, as I touched on. I think a lot of it will be they'll want to bring cornerback blitz. I think they'll want to slant rush. When you bring slots and linebackers and you drop out on the backside, even if it's just a 5-man rush, you can get a lot of unblocked opportunities. That's what you want to do. You want to speed up Stafford. Even if he's not sacked, he'll want to get the ball a little bit faster. The positive for them is that even though he wants to get the ball, he won't force it and just throw it. But at the same time, he also still stays very accurate. But you want him to go to a read a lot faster. And that's one of the ways that you could do it, by bringing a cornerback blitz and a linebacker and dropping somebody out, because then at the same time you can trust your safeties now with the versatility to even drop back into man coverage if you want to. Again, the slant blitzing and the stunts against some of their interior offensive linemen, I think laterally you can give them some redirect issues where they just can't keep up, and then you can spill Stafford from the middle, and that's the best thing that you can do because you don't have as many threats once he gets out wide. So again, outside zone stretch plays, they want to go weak side. Inside zone, they want to go towards the strong side of the formation most of the time. Again, I expect the Lions to try to simplify their scheme a little bit. Would like to see, because we saw it last game, was we talk about these little adjustments, is this is a 60-minute game. Last time we played the LA Rams, it was about the slight adjustments, and there was one example that stood out to me. The LA Rams ran about the same play maybe 3 or 4 times in this game. Same pass play, pretty much the same concept, where they basically knew it was cover 1 defense. The Lions would bring a blitz. Maybe they wouldn't, but they knew it was cover 1, and they run the same look. Here comes Puka in motion. He'd run a drag. The slot would run a corner route, and it would come down to those two. And usually Stafford would look for the corner, but if we sat outside leverage well, he'd come back to the drag underneath. I would like to see the Lions, as this game rolls along, because I don't think they'll be able to do this from the jump. Maybe they will if they do the exact same thing. But it's going to be about the adjustments. I thought Aaron Glenn did an incredible job watching it back on the adjustments he made. He really reached in his bag by the time this game was over, to getting into inverted coverage, and all of a sudden here was a straight cover 2 look, and he was really getting creative with trying to find different ways to just give a different look. And I thought one of the best things that he did, even on a completed pass, was gave him cover 1.
All right, so let me show you what I'm talking about. Lions are going to go cover 1 here, and they did this multiple times in this game. You see the safeties rotate, so now all of a sudden they're going to create basically a natural pick play with the safety rolling down to cover Puka on this crossing route. The Lions are also here going to bring a blitz, so there is no middle field help outside of the middle field safety. And as soon as Stafford reads that, he can just stand in, wait for the drag route to clear, and throw the crossing route as long as he has the pass protection, because he knows there's no help in the middle of the field. So later in the game, even on this completion, I love the idea. Aaron Glenn came back and said, look, I'm going to blitz from the middle of the field. I'm going to blitz that rat linebacker, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop out my edge rusher, and he's going to stand in the way, because as soon as Stafford sees that middle field blitzer, he's going to want to wait for that crossing route. But Hutchinson's going to be in the way, and he's going to force them to wait and wait. Hopefully our pressure gets home. Now, unfortunately, it didn't, but it's going to force him to wait. It's going to really make that window to throw much smaller, and by that time, he's now too late to get to the corner route. And again, shout out to Vildor for adjusting. He gave up the touchdown on this play, but here he's playing outside leverage well, and he kind of kind of sticks it and takes it away. So good adjustment from players as well. But I love that from Glenn, because here's the thing with this Rams offense. Like ours, they're smart. They're going to get their quarterback answers at the line. They're going to use motion, whether that's running or passing the football, to find answers. What coverage are you in? And then we're going to run a beater for that. But the flip side is, where you have an advantage defensively, is you make one wrinkle, all of a sudden what they had as a play to beat that may not beat what you wrinkle into. For example, when we played San Fran last season and we, on fourth down, tried to get into a play to beat man coverage, San Fran showed man, just like the play that I showed you earlier with the linebacker over the tight end. At the snap, they went into cover 2 and our guy wasn't open. Here comes pressure, and we did not pick up a fourth down. We ended up losing that game. That was one of the swing plays. You have that advantage as the defense to show it, wrinkle it, and potentially create a big play for your defense. And this is the Aaron Glenn that I want to see on Sunday night.
Want a complete pass. You just want a sack. You don't need 3 turnovers. You just want a negative to throw this offense back. That's all the Lions, I think, are looking for in this one. Any negatives they get is a complete win against this offense, because they are so efficient. That's what the Lions need to do. And I thought Glenn did a great job as the game rolled on to just keep working and searching to find something that would throw them off. And once he got a sense of, hey, they're doing the same thing too. They know what they want against us. Now let's flip what we do. And almost basically forcing them to throw the football where you want it. And Glenn has done that in the past. We've seen him do things like that before, where you're almost kind of baiting them into doing what you know that they want to get to. And that's something that I'm really excited to see in this game as the game rolls on. If we can get a play just like that, I think we can in this game. Well, Egan could be the little things, like your Sam linebacker, say Barnes on the line of scrimmage. Instead of you're having your off-ball linebacker in man coverage playing man on the back, he could show it, but at the snap, linebacker blitzes, and instead now your Sam backer takes the running back. Little tweaks like that can just throw off exactly who the matchup is and give you an opportunity to, one, create misblocks in the interior, but also just kind of throw off the process and force them just to hold the ball a little bit longer on the play, or potentially be a little bit inaccurate on the play. Out coverage, things like that, I love that, especially because you can bring them the cornerback blitz. Now, from a personnel spot in the back end, I want to see these corners play aggressive and safeties, especially on third down. If we are in zone on third down, I would love to see these guys play really aggressive on the sticks, plant and drive. I thought Cam Sutton actually did a really good job of this when he was on the single side playing one-on-one with the receiver and just straight up playing one-on-one. We saw it on the Puka play to end the game. He played one-on-one. He was good at the top of the route. He sat down with the deep curl and he broke it up. Things like that. Vildor, I thought, had some issues with this. The safety position, I thought, had some issues with this. We just gave a little bit too much space. They make it very difficult to drive on those routes, but I think being aggressive to plant and drive is crucial in this game, especially when they're playing the sticks. Being able to do that and being willing to plant and drive is going to be massive in this one, because they're going to work in front of your safeties over and over. They're going to work in front of your cornerbacks and off coverage or zone coverage. So just being willing to plant and drive and just being prepared to do so is going to be crucial. Yeah, they can get you with double moves, right? We saw that last season. That's the downside. But especially on third down, right? 3rd and 1, I think they got us on the touchdown, which was like a fade. He did like the little sluggo when he hit us with the touchdown. Yes, that's where they can get you. That's the downside. But on 3rd and 5+, I would like to see the Lions crank up that aggressiveness. I can understand what Cam was doing, though. They're truly watching it back, because he was playing aggressive. He was saying, look, I'm going to take this away. And he felt the sluggo, and he's like, I'm taking that away. And it just got him over top. Sometimes that's the risk reward, but I think on 3rd and 5+, maybe not 3rd and 1, that's a spot to be aggressive like that for the Lions, and I wouldn't be mad at it. On 1st down, you're going to get a lot of those play action looks. They're going to try to get play action wheel shots or posts. They're going to try to create kind of those, two-man setups, especially against zone coverage, where they want to pull a corner and they want to hit it right behind. They missed it last year against us, the Cup. That was one of their negatives. Incomplete pass because they ran a wheel and Stafford just missed a pass, but it was like wide open. Things like that they're going to try to get on early downs, and then their backup will be kind of checking it down. On 2nd down, though, if it's 2nd and medium, you'll get some of the, hey, let's be efficient, let's stay on top of the chain, especially if it's 2nd and 7. They'll come out a lot of times in the pistol, because you get a lot of pistol / single back, a little bit of shotgun from this team, but a lot of pistol. Quick passing. They love their little curl flat setup, so they'll get the ball out fast there. I think that's an area where, again, you could potentially have some success by showing like, hey, we're in cover 3. You could throw this flat route. Immediately turning that into a cloud coverage, having a safety roll over top and allowing your cornerback to drive, potentially creating opportunity like that where you can get a jump on the football by showing cover 3 and then just jumping out of it. So you got to keep an eye out for that quick stuff, especially on 2nd and a little bit longer. Still love their play action shot attempts, but that's where the chip flats come into play. A lot of the outside zone fakes, because you're expecting run, especially on 2nd and 5, but that's where you get kind of the outside zone fakes and you get the boot off of that, because everybody's playing so aggressive. They're really good at playing against what they expect you to do, and that's why they're so efficient. And again, the running back screens are a massive threat. Usually it's check down and screens. There's not much beyond that, but the screens are a threat because of the fakes that they have off it, specifically the inside zone, the outside zone fakes. Finally speaking then about Finally speaking, then, once they get to the red zone, they're pretty much middle of the pack in success right here. But again, Robinson, one-on-one is what they want to go to. And the other receiver you can't count out is, of course, Tutu Atwell. And he actually was utilized a ton, and that's a lot of those deep corner plays. We saw a lot of defensive pass interference and a lot of defensive holding last season from the Lions, just being physical with those guys. I don't have an issue with it. I'd rather take a defensive holding than giving up a big play. We also saw some missed opportunities. Vildor nearly got a pick that he undercut. He just didn't come up with the football. We had things like that happen. So I'm cool with it being physical, contesting. Let's see if we can take a football away. But guys like Atwell will want to get vertical. Robinson will be the second level threat big time. And then obviously everything Kupp does underneath and all the movement, he's going to give you pre-snap. And then Puka Nacua, run after catch, is the threat. Do not let him break plays because he'll take something 5 yards and make it 40. And that's the threat that I think he adds to the table for this offense. And they love to do rollout plays. They love to create pick plays. A lot of times Lions say sense against man. It's just about alternating who's dropping into coverage, who's playing middle field, are we playing two-man. Alternating, that's massive, but specifically, again, getting pressure in those spots, heating him up was key for us last time. So for me in this one, man, this is going to be an absolute battle. I don't think there's just like, oh, do this and the Rams are done. Like, they're going to find a way to be competitive. They're going to find a way to put up points. You take away the run, they're still going to have success. You take away the pass, well, they probably won't have much success, but I don't think you could just take away the pass. So they're going to have that. Lions offensively, all I want is more consistency in the run game throughout. It doesn't have to be elite all the way. It doesn't have to be 200 yards. Just be more consistent. Let's try to keep positives into the fourth quarter. That would be huge if the Lions can continue to find results like that. And then hopefully a negative, right? Hopefully an interception. Maybe you get a tip pass. Maybe he wasn't expecting it, got picked it off. Maybe you got a strip sack fumble. Reach for the ball when you get to Stafford, right? Something to throw off this efficiency and give us an extra possession like we did against Kansas City last year. That would be ideal. But outside of that, let's just force a couple incomplete passes, right? Maybe you're one of our cornerbacks. We got a lot of ball hawks in the back end. Somebody take something away. Push the ball into the air. Let's get the football taken away one time. So stay on top of the sixth early, pass on early downs, and defensively, let's see if we can get one turnover. That's my goal for this game. And I think if we do that, we'll be in great shape for this game. So overall, at home, I love the Lions' ability to kick the field goal. So I got Jake Bates potentially making two of them in this game. And that is a Detroit Lions 27-20 win over the LA Rams. I tweaked it a little bit from what I initially had, a little bit lower score here. But I think this one could be very similar to the last game. We could see really early scoring. And as everybody kind of is like, okay, let's adjust. And they're like, oh, they're attacking that guy on the defense front. Let's adjust. I think the Lions can be more consistent because I don't think they have to just pick out one guy. I think they could actually have success across the board. Maybe not dominant. They can't dominate somebody over there. But they can have more consistent success. But for the Lions defense, it'll be about just trying to find ways to slow them down and just give some wrinkles as the game rolls on. LA will do the same thing. They'll adjust defensively. So it's going to slow down, I think, as the game rolls along. Got the Lions winning this game, starting 1-0, 27-20 at home in a playoff rematch. This is going to be an incredible game. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you, Pride, for watching, and I'm out.